gate, stepping into the truth, walk in the land of the brave, return back with a new view. Shadows danced on the wall, they told tales of deceit. Once we hear the call, light and dark must compete. Be bold with Boulden. The story unfolds. Be bold until the truth has been told. Be bold.
Welcome everybody, Greg Boulden here, owner of America Emboldened, the network, as well as you've seen me on the podcast, Be Bold with Boulden. I have not podcasted in months, but you know what? It's time. It's time to say something. I've been publishing on Substack if you'd like to read my musings and some of my thoughts over the last several months since June, my last podcast. But today as I almost said Three Kings Day. Today as the No Kings Day protests are spurred across this country, to which I did get text messages asking me to donate money so that way they could provide pizza to college students so they could participate. As this farcical protest goes on around our country, I wanted to offer some strong thoughts. Now, my mentor, Michael Badnarik, who I interviewed right on his deathbed, he had some thoughts that have helped shape the way that I view things, and many others as well. And I believe he had some thoughts because he was an expert educator on the Constitution. So today, I'm that guy. I'm going to teach you about the Constitution, just for fun, shits and giggles. Now, before we get started, I want you all to do me a quick favor. I want you to get a piece of paper, something you can write on. So find a pen, a pencil. We're going to write something down in bold letters because we are bold people. We're going to write this down. If you need to find a permanent marker to write this down as well, then go right ahead, get a permanent marker. Take your time. Here we go. You ready? You're going to write down, the United States is not a democracy. Now I want you to underline that twice, not 3 times. And if you've ever voted for someone and you've regretted it later, underline it every time you can think that you did that. The United States is not a democracy. Because once you understand that one sentence, everything else in politics in the United States does make sense. And you'll start to realize that this farce of this is what democracy looks like, democracy being under attack, every time you turn on that television, which admittedly I really have tried not to do, I try hard not to do any of that, you will hear a politician, mostly the Democrats, solemnly proclaiming, we have to protect our democracy. And every time they say that, I reach instinctively to my back pocket from my wallet, and then I look for my copy of the Constitution in my left pocket because I know one of them is about to be violated by the person saying this. See, democracy sounds nice. It rolls off the tongue really well, right? It's got a great PR campaign. Power to the people. Majority rules. Everyone gets a say. But here's actually the problem with all of that. In a democracy, majority rules everything, including your rights. So that means if 51% of your neighbors in your neighborhood decide that you don't need a car, you don't need your firearms, you don't need your property, well, you're a tough luck citizen, right? You're out of it because the majority has spoken. Now that's not freedom, that's mob rule, but with better slogans, a better PR campaign. A republic, on the other hand, is based on the rule of law. In a republic, our rights, your rights, aren't subject to the popular vote. They're not gifts given to you by the government. They're inherent, right? So these people that are marching today, the irony is they don't even understand that they have inherent rights, because they need to be reminded, as well as many people. Send this video that I'm creating, if you find this helpful today, to remind people that your rights come from your creator, not from Congress, not from presidents, and certainly not some bureaucrat with some clipboard somewhere. The Constitution does not grant any rights. It protects the ones that you already have. So basically, it's like when you play soccer, there's a rule book for it, for what's offsides, right? Yellow card, red card, when to give it. The Constitution's the rule book for government. It's not a permission slip for politicians on what they're allowed to do to you, like you might see in my home state of Delaware with the constitutional changes and violations, I should say, with permit to purchase coming out next month. I like to say, and Michael Badnarik gave me lots of things about fireplaces and where the Constitution should be kept. I would like to say the Constitution is a leash. But the problem with this right now is our dogs, the bureaucrats, the Congress, they've chewed through it, and now it's been running all over in our living room, and it's not even potty trained. And so the Constitution was a leash that had a really good idea on the dog, and somewhere along the way, we've lost our way. Now, people like to say the Founding Fathers, they could never have seen where we'd come 2,000 years over the last 250 years. What I'm getting at is they looked back 2,000 years ago. They looked back 4,000 years ago. The Founding Fathers weren't confused at all about what they were creating. They didn't just roll the dice and land on Republic as they went around the board. They ended up studying history, which, by the way, is something modern politicians avoid because it ruins their speeches. Anyway, they looked back at ancient Greece, the birthplace of democracy. And what did they find? Chaos. They looked at Rome, where democracy turned into an empire, and they said, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do that one again. And Benjamin Franklin, he was like, what kind of government have you given us? He replied, a republic, if you can keep it. He didn't say a democracy, if you can vote hard enough for it. You know, and that's where it leads me to why I'm doing this today on No King's Day, because I've noticed that there's this new breed of activists that are out there. They're running around for the last, ever since Trump got in the office, every 2 weeks here in Delaware, my state, but I know it's all around the country. Today, I think there's 2,500 protests across this country. And it's the No King's Day crowd. You've seen them. They're out there with signs, no kings, no masters, down with the monarchy. Now, on that point, we actually do agree. The founders, they didn't want a king either. We fought a whole war to get rid of one, the Bill of Rights. That's what that was all about. But where these modern protesters, they go completely off the rails is in the thought process that no king automatically means democracy. They've traded what they see as the single tyrants with this crown for millions of mini tyrants with ballots. Put your mask on. You got to do this. You got to do that. That, my friends, is no improvement, because in a monarchy, at least you know who the tyrant is. You can point to the throne and say, there, it's that guy. He's the one. But in a democracy, the tyranny actually hides behind your smiling neighbors, the patriotic slogans. It's the tyranny of public opinion. It's backed by the machinery of the state. No King State protesters think the founders wanted a government that answers to the people's every single whim. But the founders were much wiser than these idiots. They wanted a government that actually answers the principle. They knew human emotion is fickle. It's going to swing like a pendulum. Depending on how people feel, it goes like the wind. One day the crowd is going to cheer for liberty. The next it's shouting for bread and security. So what did they do? The founders built a system that was going to slow things down with checks, balance, limits, and that pesky constitution that politicians continue to find so inconvenient. It's a republic. And that republic keeps passion from turning into persecution. It makes sure that even when the mob gets angry, your rights don't get trampled. So when No King's Day protesters say, we don't need kings, I will say, amen. But when they follow it with, we just need to let everyone vote on everything, I say, congratulations, you've just invented mob rule with paperwork. We can't forget this. The real tragedy is that so many Americans don't know this difference anymore because the marketing has been so strong. They've been taught to cheer for democracy like it's the sports team. Instead of EAGLES Eagles, it's DEMOCRACY. It's not nearly as sexy, I guess. Never mind. But they chant, save our democracy. This is what democracy looks like, while the Bill of Rights has been quietly burning to hell behind us. We've forgotten. Freedom. It's not decided by a vote. It's defended by our courage. It's written into the DNA of a republic that has always intended to protect the smallest minority, the individual. Thomas Jefferson once said, an elective despotism was not a government we fought for. In other words, if people can just vote away your rights, you're still a slave. You just get to pick your master every 4 years. That's why we don't have kings. Donald Trump is not a king. And we do not have mobs. We have law. And the highest law of this land, it's supposed to be the Constitution. So how do we keep this republic from this mob mentality? It's simple. Stop calling it a democracy. Stop letting politicians and special interest groups, 5105, whatever they're called, George Soros, all these different Act Blue people get away with redefining the words that our founders used with precision, republic. And for heaven's sake, please start reading the document that they all swore an oath to uphold. It's only 4 pages long, folks. The IRS code is longer than that, and it's a lot less useful. Every time you hear someone say, we need to defend our democracy, I want you guys, I want you to smile. Smile that knowing, slightly mischievous smile, and reply, no, my friend, we need to defend our republic. Democracy is just what happens when we forget how to read a constitution. Because once you understand that, once you point out to people they probably haven't read the Constitution or understand it, you'll never see politics the same way again. There's no putting the lid back on it. You want to know why I get into liberty-minded and I don't subscribe to the Republican Democrat Party? Because I understand this. And if enough of us remember, if enough of us can teach this to somebody else and demand it, just maybe, we'll still have the republic that Franklin talked about and challenged us to keep. But it's not my job. It's up to you. The Constitution does not defend itself. You know why? It doesn't defend itself because it's your job.